Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about something very important that happened recently between two neighboring countries, Canada and the United States. This story is about respect, independence, and what it means to be a strong nation. Just a few days ago, the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said something powerful. He said, "Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian." These words might seem simple, but they carry a deep meaning. Let's explore why he said this and what it tells us about Canada as a nation. To understand this story, we need to go back a few days. In Switzerland, there's a famous meeting place called Davos. Every year, world leaders gather there to discuss important global issues. Think of it like a big meeting where presidents, prime ministers, and business leaders come together to talk about the future. On January 20th, Prime Minister Mark Carney stood before the world and gave a speech. It wasn't just any speech, it was bold, it was direct, and it sent a clear message. Carney talked about how the world is changing. He said that the old rules that countries used to follow are breaking down. Big, powerful nations are trying to push smaller nations around. They use trade, military power, and economic pressure to get what they want. Without directly naming anyone, Carney was clearly talking about the United States and its new president, Donald Trump. Trump had been saying things that worried Canadians. He talked about making Canada part of the United States. He talked about taking over Greenland, a territory that belongs to Denmark. These weren't just jokes. These were real statements that made people nervous. So Carney stood up and said something important. He said that middle-sized countries like Canada need to work together. They need to protect their independence. They need to stand up for what's right, even when facing powerful neighbors. He also made it clear that Canada supports Greenland's right to remain Danish. Canada believes in sovereignty, which means a nation's right to control its own land and make its own decisions. The next day, January 21st, President Trump responded. And he wasn't happy. Trump said, "Canada lives because of the United States." Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements. What did Trump mean by this? He was suggesting that Canada depends completely on the United States for survival. He claimed that America protects Canada with its military. He said Canada gets many benefits, or freebies, from being next to the United States. His message was clear. Canada should be grateful and quiet. This statement upset many Canadians. Why? Because it suggested that Canada isn't a real country on its own. It suggested that without America, Canada would fail. It treated Canada like a child who needs a parent, not like an equal partner and neighbor. But here's the thing. Canada is not a weak country. Canada is not dependent on anyone for its existence. And Prime Minister Carney wanted the world to know that. On January 22nd, after returning home to Canada, Prime Minister Carney gave his response. And it was powerful. He said, "Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian." Let's break down these words because they're important. First, Canada doesn't live because of the United States. This means Canada's existence isn't a gift from America. Canada exists because Canadians built a nation. They worked hard. They created laws. They built cities, schools, hospitals, and businesses. Canada stands on its own feet. Second, Canada thrives because we are Canadian. The word thrive means to grow strong and successful. Carney wasn't just saying Canada survives. He was saying Canada succeeds and flourishes. And the reason isn't American help. The reason is Canadian strength, Canadian values, and Canadian hard work. This statement was more than just a response to Trump. It was a declaration of independence. It was Canada telling the world, we are our own nation. We respect ourselves, and we expect others to respect us too. Now you might wonder, is Canada really that strong? Can it truly stand on its own? The answer is absolutely yes. Let me tell you why. Canada has the 9th largest economy in the world. That's impressive for a country with only about 40 million people. Canada is rich in natural resources. It has oil, gas, minerals, forests, and fresh water. Canadian companies are successful around the globe. From technology to banking, from entertainment to engineering, Canada makes its mark. Yes, Canada trades heavily with the United States. About 75% of Canadian exports go to America. But here's what people forget. Trade goes both ways. The United States also depends on Canada. America buys Canadian oil, electricity, lumber, and many other products. Canadian and American economies are connected, but that's partnership, not dependence. Canada has a professional, well-trained military. Canadian soldiers have fought bravely in World War I, World War II, Korea, Afghanistan, and many peacekeeping missions. Canada is a founding member of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This means Canada has allies all over the world, not just the United States. Does America have a bigger military? Of course. America has the largest military in the world, but that doesn't mean Canada needs America to survive. Canada defends itself and contributes to global security as a valued partner. Perhaps most importantly, Canada has a strong identity. Canadian culture values multiculturalism. Canada welcomes people from all over the world. Canadians are known for being polite, peaceful, and fair. Canada has 2 official languages, English and French. It has world-class universities, healthcare for all citizens, and beautiful landscapes from coast to coast. Being Canadian means something. It means being part of a nation that believes in democracy, human rights, and helping others. These values make Canada strong from the inside. This brings us to an important lesson: respect between nations. Imagine you have a good friend who lives next door. You've known them your whole life. You help each other out. You share things. You're close. But then one day your friend says, "You know, you only exist because of me. Without me, you'd be nothing." How would you feel? Probably hurt and angry, right? You'd want to remind your friend that you're your own person. You have your own thoughts, dreams, and abilities. The friendship should be based on mutual respect, not one person looking down on the other. This is exactly what happened between Canada and the United States. These two countries have been neighbors and friends for a very long time. They share the world's longest undefended border. They've fought together in wars. They trade billions of dollars in goods every year. Their people visit each other constantly. But friendship doesn't mean one country owns the other. It doesn't mean one country can tell the other what to do. True friendship between nations, just like between people, requires respect. When Trump said Canada lives because of the United States, he broke that respect. He treated Canada as inferior, as dependent, as less important. And Carney's response was necessary to restore that respect. You might think, this is just an argument between two countries. Why should I care? Here's why it matters. All around the world, there are big countries and smaller countries. The big countries have more people, more money, and more military power. Countries like the United States, China, Russia, and India are giants. But most countries in the world are not giants. Most countries are medium-sized or small. Countries like Canada, South Korea, Australia, Poland, and many others fall into this category. The question is, in our world today, do big countries get to push around smaller countries, or do all countries, big and small, deserve respect and independence? Prime Minister Carney believes that all countries deserve respect. In his speech at Davos, he called for middle-sized countries to work together. He said they need to build a new international order based on rules, not just power. An order where human rights matter, where sovereignty is respected, where countries cooperate instead of threaten each other. This vision is important for everyone, because if big countries can bully smaller ones, then no one is safe. Today it might be Canada. Tomorrow it could be any other nation. But if countries stand together and demand respect, then the world becomes more fair and more peaceful for everyone. After Carney's strong response, Trump did something interesting. He revoked Canada's invitation to join something called the Board of Peace. Now, this Board of Peace was Trump's idea. It was supposed to be a group of nations working together, but when Canada stood up for itself, Trump kicked them out before they even joined. Some people saw this as childish. If you disagree with someone, you don't automatically kick them out of groups. You talk, you negotiate, you try to understand each other. But others saw it as proof that Carney was right to speak up. If Trump would remove Canada from a peace initiative just for expressing Canadian values, then what kind of partnership was it really? A true partnership allows disagreement and discussion. Back in Canada, many people supported their Prime Minister. They felt proud that Canada wasn't backing down. They appreciated that their leader stood up for Canadian dignity. Of course, some people worried too. Canada and the United States do a lot of business together. If relations get too bad, it could hurt both economies. Trade agreements need to be renegotiated this year. Tensions could make those negotiations harder. These concerns are valid. But there's a difference between being diplomatic and being weak. Carney was trying to be strong while still keeping the door open for respectful dialogue. This isn't the first time Canada has had to assert its independence. Throughout history, Canada has worked hard to build its own identity, separate from both Britain and the United States. Canada used to be a British colony, but gradually, over many years, Canada gained more and more independence. In 1867, Canada became a confederation. In 1931, Canada gained full legislative independence through the Statute of Westminster. In 1982, Canada patriated its constitution, meaning it could change its own fundamental laws without British approval. Each step was Canada saying, "We are our own nation." Similarly, Canada has always had to define itself apart from the United States. Being neighbors with a superpower isn't easy. The United States is 10 times larger in population. Its economy is much bigger. Its cultural influence through movies, music, and television is enormous. But Canada has always maintained its own path. Canada has universal health care while America doesn't. Canada has stricter gun control laws. Canada welcomes more immigrants per capita. Canada takes different positions on international issues. These choices aren't about being anti-American. They're about being pro-Canadian. They're about a nation choosing what's best for its own people based on its own values. So what have we learned from this story? What makes a nation truly strong? It's not just military power, though that helps. It's not just economic wealth, though that matters too. Real strength comes from several things. Unity. When people in a country believe in their nation and support each other, that country becomes strong. Canadians rallying behind their Prime Minister shows unity, values. When a country stands for something, for principles like freedom, fairness, and human rights, it earns respect. Canada's commitment to these values makes it admirable. Self-respect. When a nation respects itself, others will too. By refusing to accept disrespectful treatment, Canada showed self-respect. Courage. It takes courage to stand up to a more powerful neighbor. Speaking truth to power, as Carney did, requires bravery. Identity. Knowing who you are and what makes you special gives strength. Canada's unique identity, different from both Britain and America, is its foundation. Resilience. The ability to face challenges and keep going makes nations endure. Canada has faced many challenges over its history and has always emerged stronger. These qualities matter more than the size of an army or the wealth of a treasury. So what happens next between Canada and the United States? The truth is, no one knows for sure. International relations are complicated and always changing. Both countries will need to work together in the coming months. Trade negotiations are scheduled. Climate change, border security, and many other issues require cooperation. But this incident has set an important tone. Canada has made it clear that cooperation must be based on mutual respect. The United States has been reminded that even close allies have their dignity and their limits. Will there be more tensions? Possibly. Will there be reconciliation? Hopefully. Will the relationship change? Definitely. But one thing is certain, Canada has shown the world that it will not be treated as inferior. It will not accept being told it exists only because of someone else's permission. It will stand proudly as an independent nation with its own voice. And that message resonates far beyond North America. Countries around the world watched this exchange. They saw a middle-sized nation stand up to a superpower. They saw dignity and self-respect in action. Let's return to those powerful words. Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian. These words remind us of an important truth. Every nation, like every person, has inherent worth and dignity. That worth doesn't come from being big or powerful. It doesn't come from having rich neighbors. It comes from within. Canada thrives because of the hard work of its people, because of its natural resources and beautiful land, because of its commitment to fairness and multiculturalism, because of its democratic institutions and rule of law, because of its contributions to science, arts, and global peacekeeping. Canada thrives because it has built something worth being proud of. This story isn't really about an argument between two politicians. It's about something deeper. It's about national dignity. It's about the respect that all nations deserve. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Whether you're from Canada, the United States, or anywhere else in the world, there's a lesson here. Respect matters. Independence matters. Identity matters. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is simply stand tall and declare, I am who I am, and that is enough. Canada has declared exactly that, and the world is listening. Thank you for your attention.